dear students, myself Gangadhar Solanke, and I welcome you all to the MCGM's virtual classroom. My dear students, today in Standard 8 Geography, we'll be learning the topic Ocean Currents. Our first chapter in Geography was Local Time and Standard Time. Then second one, Interior of the Earth. Third one, Humidity and Clouds. In fourth chapter, we discussed about the structure of ocean floor, and now in fifth chapter, we are going to discuss about the ocean currents. So for this, in our textbook, figure 5.1 is given, and what you have to do or we have to do to understand the concept of ocean currents. We need a large metal tray, water plastic sequence, spirit lamp. So keep the large metal tray on a stand like this, fill it with water. After the water becomes still, leave the sequence in them. After some time, the sequence will start floating in the water and become still too. वो मूव भी होंगे और मूव होना बंद भी हो जाएंगे. Then what to do? Observe all these things, and after some time, light the spirit lamp. Light the spirit lamp and place it below one corner of the tray. Observe what happens. On the basis of observation, discuss in the class and put forth your opinions regarding the experiment. Consider the following questions for the same. Now the questions are also given. What did you understand initially by observing the sequence? When the temperature of water started increasing, what changes did you see? Observe the movement of the sequence. What conclusion can be drawn from the same, and where can such processes take place on the Earth's surface? And the last one, what are those processes and why do they happen? Now, as our schools are closed due to the corona pandemic, we are unable to do this experiment, but we can continue with the observations. It will occur to you that as the temperature of water increases, the plastic sequence move from one place to another, and as the temperature rises, what will happen? As the temperature rises, the density of water decreases. जैसे temperature बढ़ जाएगा, water की density कम हो जाएगी. Temperature increase, density decrease, and it becomes lighter, and therefore the water having low temperature, which is heavier, replaces the water with higher temperatures. After some time, the sequence start moving in a circular motion, like this here you can see. In circular motion, there is movement of this sequence because of the flow of water. Now another thing. A very strange incident occurred in the Pacific Ocean in the year 1992. A cargo ship sailed towards America from Hong Kong. While traveling through the Pacific Ocean near the Hawaii Island, a container full of toys fell into the ocean and broke here near the Hong Kong. Around 28,000 rubber toys started floating on the ocean. 28,000 toys. On 10th January 1992. Now a strange thing happened after around 10 months. 10 महीने बाद. On 16th November 1992, some of these toys reached the coast of Alaska. Some of them crossed the Bering Strait and moved up to the Arctic Ocean by the year 2000. here, and some of them also floated to Atlantic Ocean from the Arctic. Some of these reached the eastern coast of America in 2003, and some of the toys had even reached the European coast by 2007. Now, from the Hawaii Island, some toys took the route to Australia. And to understand these two figures, figure 5.3 of a toy duck and 5.2 map showing the distribution of toys in the ocean given in our textbook. And the question is, why did the toys travel in this way? And the answer of this question is our today's topic, that is the ocean currents. Now, the ocean water can be divided into two parts based on depth surface water and deep water. Based on depth surface water and deep water. So, if we talk about the depth surface water, the upper layer extends up to 500 meters from the sea level and below 500 meter depth. So, the region from sea level to the depth of 500 meter is considered to be the surface of water. Sunlight can reach till this depth, 500 meter tak. The movements in this layer occur mainly due to differences in temperature and salinity. The planetary winds give speed to the ocean currents. वहाँ तक the surface flow is considered up to 500 meters of depth. The flow on the surface of the ocean moves only 10% of the oceanic water, and the surface flow is considered up to 500 meters of depth. So, the discharge of water in the ocean is measured in sword drop unit. So, it is equivalent to 1 million cubic meter, that is second discharge. The horizontal flow of ocean water occurs as warm and cold currents. Horizontal flow जो होता है वो अगर हम देखेंगे तो उसमें दो टाइप है या दो प्रकार है, एक तो वार्म करंट होंगे या फिर कोल्ड करंट्स होंगे. These currents flow from the equator to the poles and from the poles to the equator. From the equator to the poles and from the poles to the equator. These currents are pushed to long distances by the planetary winds. हवा की वजह से क्या होता है, वो ज़्यादा दूरी तक पुश होते हैं. As a result, the ocean waters flow from equator to both the poles and vice versa. यहाँ से वहाँ तक, वहाँ से फिर यहाँ तक. And to understand this, figure 5.4 is given. Study the map again and again. Answer the following questions. Again, the questions are given based on this figure 5.4. Here in this color, these are warm currents and the cold current. Now the questions, what are the major types of ocean currents? That is the warm currents and cold currents. What do you call the currents flowing from the equator to the poles? Now for the answers you have to observe this figure carefully. What do you call the currents flowing from the poles to the equator? When the currents are moving in a circular manner, what difference is visible in their direction in northern and southern hemisphere respectively? What might happen at the places where these currents meet? When two different types of currents meet along the coast? When two different types of currents meet along the coast, then what type of human settlements and occupations are seen? Now, to go in detail, we have studied that ocean currents are formed Ocean currents are formed due to differences in temperature, in the density and in the planetary winds. Now in addition, the following regions are also responsible for the direction of flow of ocean currents and their velocity. And which are the regions? Rotation of the earth and the continental structure. So if we talk about the rotation of the earth, because of the rotation of the earth, the ocean currents move in clockwise direction. Because of the rotation of the earth, the ocean currents move in clockwise direction in the northern hemisphere and in anti-clockwise direction in the southern hemisphere. Here you can see winds and currents turn to left in southern hemisphere, winds and currents turn to right in northern hemisphere. And here if you talk about the ocean currents of the Indian Ocean, there is similarity between the patterns of the ocean currents of the Pacific and Atlantic Ocean, but the flow of the ocean currents of the Indian Ocean are different. And why different? Because the Indian Ocean is landlocked in the north. अगर हम मैप में देखेंगे तो the equator divides this ocean into two parts, northern and the southern. So the monsoon winds influence this ocean tremendously. These winds change their direction according to the season, and in the northern part of the Indian Ocean, currents flow in clockwise direction in summer, while in winter they flow in the opposite direction due to reversal of monsoon winds. Now we'll see how continental structure affects the ocean currents according to alignment of the coastline. Now about this we people already studied in the last session. According to the alignment of the coastline, the direction of the ocean current changes. The velocity of the ocean currents is around 2 to 10 km per hour. The ocean currents are divided into two types, that is cold currents and warm currents. Next point, effects of ocean surface currents on human life, how it affect the human life, that we are going to see. Ocean currents specially affect the climate of the regions having proximity to the sea. In cold regions where warm ocean currents flow, climate becomes warmer, and in some regions the amount of precipitation increases. For example, the warm ocean currents flowing near Western Europe, Southern Alaska and Japanese coast reduce the intensity of the winters there and make them warmer. As a result, these parts do not freeze in winters. Now what about the cold currents? Had ocean currents been absent, the ocean water would have remained still. अगर ocean current नहीं होंगे तो in such waters, the biotic components would have been devoid of food. उन्हें food नहीं मिलेगा. Consequently, marine life and its ecosystem would have been limited in its extent. And in regions where cold and warm currents meet, plankton, vegetation, algae, etc. grow, and this is food for the fish. तो but obvious वहाँ पर fish ज़्यादा मिलते हैं, therefore fish come here, क्योंकि उनका food वहाँ पर है in large numbers and breed. This has in turn led to formation of large fishing grounds. Grand Banks near the North American coast in Atlantic Ocean and Dogger Bank near the European coast are some of the examples. With respect to the water transport, ocean currents are very important, because comparing to the other ways of transportation, water transport is cheap. If the transportation is done according to the flow of ocean currents, the speed of the ships increases and the fuel is saved too. Near the coasts where the cold currents flow, the amount of precipitation is low. For example, in Peru, Chile and the arid desert of Southwest Africa. At places where the cold and the warm currents meet, thick fog is formed, and such fogs create problems for transportation. The warm Gulf Stream and the cold Labrador currents meet near the Newfoundland Island, and this leads to the dense fog. Because of these cold currents, icebergs are carried away from the polar areas, and if such icebergs come along the marine routes, they are hazardous to the ships. Like this you can see, ये जितने ऊपर होते हैं उससे कई ज़्यादा पानी में होते हैं आइसबर्ग, और वो नहीं दिखे तो चांस ऑफ एक्सीडेंट होता है. नेक्स्ट, डीप ओशन करंट्स. Water currents beyond the depth of 500 meters are known as deep water or ocean currents. उसके ऊपर के अलग और उसके नीचे के अलग. Deep ocean currents beyond the depth of 500 meters. These currents are formed due to the differences in temperature and density of the water in different parts of the ocean, and this is known as thermohaline circulation. These currents flow till the seabed of the ocean, and they flow like rivers continuously below the surface of the sea. That now you can see in this figure 5.5 deep ocean currents. How it flow like rivers. Deep ocean currents. Difference in temperatures of various parts of the ocean is the major reason behind the deep sea currents. Difference in the temperatures. Warm water has lower salinity and density. Such water comes to the surface of the sea, and cold water with high density goes down. As you can see this in this figure 5.6. Greenland and Europe moves to more depths. This water moves to the Antarctica at these depths, and later the water moves to the surface. Thus the redistribution of the ocean water keeps occurring, and this redistribution takes around 500 years to complete. This type of movement is also known as conveyor belt. This one you can see. And now the last point of the topic, here the ocean conveyor belt, and the last point, importance of deep ocean currents. Due to thermohaline circulation, movement of CO2 occurs on a large scale. And because of this circulation, ocean water moves from the surface to the bottom and from the bottom to the surface. Warm water is transferred to the bottom from the surface, and the nutrient rich cold water is circulated to the surface. This is what we have to keep in mind about the ocean currents. The ocean currents do not flow very close to the coast. Coast के ज़्यादा close वो नहीं flow होते. They flow near the lower limit of the continental shelf. Even though the velocity of the ocean current is less, the water carried them is immense. Under the influence of the westerlies, in the mid latitudes, the ocean currents flow from west to east, but near the equator they flow from east to west, and this leads to a circular pattern. For that you can observe the figure 5.4. So in today's topic we discussed about the ocean currents and especially horizontal ocean current, factors like rotation of the earth, continental structure, effects of ocean surface currents on human life, deep ocean currents and importance of deep ocean currents.
Please subscribe the channel and press bell icon to get notifications.
So my dear students, this is all for today. Thank you very much. Stay home, stay safe, take care.